Welcome to Marketplace Tech Bytes. It's our weekly roundup of some of the big stories making headlines in tech and maybe some you might have missed. I'm Meghan McCarty Carino. This week, OpenAI enters the defense economy. What the Intel CEO's resignation says about U.S. chip manufacturers. And Amazon is set to pilot carbon removal at one of its data centers. Here to discuss all that is our regular contributor, Burks. She's a managing partner at Collab Capital. Hey, Jewel.
Hey, Meghan. How's it going?
It's going well. So good to have you. So we're going to kick things off, as we always do, with our bite of the week. This is a number that gives us some insight into our top tech stories. So, Jewel, what number do we need to know this week?
This week, we need to know 1.5 billion, and that is the amount that the startup Anduril raised in their last round. And they were in the news this week, so excited to chat more about them.
Right. So Anduril is this startup that has partnered now with OpenAI. We got some news about this week, and it's a company that's working on defense tech for the U.S. military. I mean, this whole intersection of AI and the military is one that seems kind of like a natural in some ways, but is also often very controversial. What do we know about this company and about this partnership with OpenAI?
So this company has been in the news. It's really important to note the founder of the company, Palmer Luckey. He's not a new person, but maybe someone that the listeners haven't heard of, but definitely should be on everyone's radar. He is another sort of eccentric Silicon Valley founder. He previously was a founder at a company that sold to Facebook, and is sort of a billionaire founder, and now is focused on the defense technology industry, and has built up Anduril to really make sure that military personnel are able to make great choices and decisions and defend the nation. So really interesting now that they are partnering with OpenAI to really to use AI to make the technology smarter and help the folks make better decisions in terms of where drones are going and how we're defending ourselves.
Right. So I understand OpenAI changed its policies around collaborations with kind of defense industry earlier this year. They had previously, had kind of a prohibition against it, but changed the policy to allow for some military collaboration, but it still bars the use of OpenAI tech in weaponry and something, that is specifically going to be used in kind of a, offensive manner. We're talking about defensive applications here, right?
That's right. So OpenAI quietly removed its ban on military applications for ChatGPT back in January. And so it's interesting that now we're seeing them develop these types of partnerships with Anduril and other companies. And they're not the only ones. We're seeing this across the industry. Anthropic working with Palantir, and Palantir has obviously been in this space for a long time. And so this is it's a change, and I think we're also seeing that employees at some of these companies are not super thrilled about how this change is going.
Right. It's interesting because, we saw definitely in kind of the late 2010s, a lot of employee activism around, protesting these kinds of collaborations, particularly at Google. I wonder if, companies are seeing less of a risk to their brand or just less, kind of employee power around this stuff, as many of these companies move into these types of partnerships.
I think the companies are seeing major opportunity, especially given the change in administration. One thing to note about Palmer Luckey is that he was a Trump supporter, and actually, it was said at the time that back in 2018, he lost his job at Facebook, now Meta, because of his support for Trump. And so now, obviously, with another Trump administration, there is a move to do more, and likely because it's going to be a more favorable environment for these types of collaborations. So really interesting to watch what happens here, and particularly how companies like OpenAI adjust their policies to make working with government entities and defense entities more attractive.
All right, so now we want to move on to a company that is trying to kind of catch up to the AI boom, is kind of on the outside looking in, and that is Intel. This week, the CEO, Pat Gelsinger, resigned, likely pushed out by the company's board. Intel, of course, has been one of the leaders of the original semiconductor boom, that started decades ago, but basically missed the whole AI boat. What do you make of this development, Jewel, and what it says about the chips market?
It says that the chips market is developing rapidly, and those companies that are not staying on top of particularly the AI movement, they are going to get left behind. And I think the board at Intel did not feel that the CEO was moving quickly enough, and his really turnaround plan wasn't progressing quickly enough for them. And so they did kind of make him make a choice to either get fired or to step down more gracefully. So really interesting to see such a long-standing company that has been integral to U.S. chip manufacturing really have to sort of take a back seat to what's happening in terms of NVIDIA and Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing as well.
There has been some recent reporting about other companies besides NVIDIA, big ones like Amazon, another legacy chip maker, AMD, also a slew of smaller startups potentially producing chips that might rival NVIDIA's very powerful processors for AI applications. How hot is the competition getting in the space?
The competition is definitely heating up. I think at this point, speed and efficiency is the name of the game. And like you said, we're seeing companies like Amazon come out and say that they have been able to develop a faster, more efficient, you know, programs and chips that can rival what NVIDIA has done. And so, yeah, it's becoming a more competitive market, and it's going to be really interesting to see which companies actually end up the victor in this space.
All right. Well, speaking of efficiency, we finally want to move on to an interesting development in the fight to reduce the environmental impact of AI. Amazon recently announced a new partnership with a startup called Orbital to use a carbon filtering substance on site at one of their data centers as kind of a pilot to hopefully reduce carbon emissions on site. Jewel, what do we know about kind of what Orbital and other startups in this space are working on when it comes to reducing emissions?
Yeah, I think Orbital and other companies in this space are doing some really important work. We know that with the advent of AI, we're creating a lot more waste and energy and water, and we need things to counteract that. And particularly companies like Amazon need help because they made these huge proclamations around getting to net zero by 2040. And the current motion is not getting them there. And so they have to figure out ways to partner to find new and innovative solutions to really lower what their carbon emissions footprint is. And so Orbital is coming in to potentially be that solution. I found this really interesting because Orbital is another early startup. Unlike Anduril that we spoke about earlier, they are even earlier in their life cycle. And it isn't too common for Amazon to announce partnerships with kind of earlier stage startups. And in this case, really a pilot program. So it's interesting that they are coming out to announce this, but will be great for us to track and continue to see how Amazon and other companies really partner to lower their carbon footprint.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I mean, I know we've talked about before this issue of the carbon footprint of all of these, the burgeoning AI industry, and so many of these companies made these big pledges to reduce, in some cases, like in Microsoft, to actually go net negative with their carbon emissions. That this maybe the if you could find a silver lining in this problem, that investment in companies like Orbital to do these kinds of carbon capture and other bioengineering moonshots might be increasing. Are you seeing a lot of interest in this kind of stuff in the startup space?
Yeah, I mean, I think people are watching everything that's surrounding AI and all of the positive and negative externalities and seeing where they can build solutions that can impact those externalities. And so Orbital is a great example. We're seeing others in this space that are going after making sure that um, all of what AI, of course, there's so many great things that we're able to access because of AI and do more of because of AI. But on the flip side, there is a lot of environmental impact. And so we want to make sure that the companies that are getting the right level of support and partnership are ones that are looking at those problems and really addressing them.
And I understand Orbital itself uses AI in kind of its, materials engineering. So finally, a use case we've been hearing about, well, maybe AI can be used to solve some of these big problems. Well, we'll see.
We'll see.
All right, that's Jewel Burks Solomon at Collab Capital. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And thanks to all of you for watching Marketplace Tech Bytes Week in Review. Daniel Shin produced this episode. I'm Meghan McCarty Carino. This is APM.